The day my wife walked out of the courtroom, she looked at me, smiled, and said, "Enjoy starting over from nothing." And technically, she was right. She took the house, she took the car, she took half of my savings. But what she didn't know was this: the worst day of my life was also the day my real life began. My name is Daniel Carter. I'm 46 years old. And for 15 years, I believed I had a perfect marriage. Looking back now, I realized something painful. The signs were always there. I just didn't want to see them. When I met my wife, Melissa, she was charming, confident, and ambitious. She had a way of walking into a room and making everyone notice her. I was different. Quiet. Hard-working. Predictable. Maybe that's why she liked me. I was stable, reliable, safe. At least that's what I told myself. In the beginning, life felt simple. We bought a small house in the suburbs. Nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, a tiny backyard. But to us, it felt like a castle. I worked long hours as a project manager for a construction company. Melissa worked in marketing. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. Or at least, I thought we were happy. The first 5 years of marriage were good. We traveled. We laughed. We built routines together. But slowly, things started changing. And like most people, I ignored it. Because admitting something is wrong in your marriage feels like admitting you failed. Melissa started spending more time at work, late meetings, networking events, business trips. At first, I was proud of her. She's building her career, I told my friends. But then something else started happening. She stopped asking about my day, stopped sitting with me at dinner, stopped laughing at the little jokes we used to share. We weren't fighting, but we weren't really living together either. We were just existing in the same house. One night, I asked her something simple. "Are you happy?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she sighed. That sigh told me more than words ever could. Finally, she said, "Daniel, I feel stuck." That word hit me like a punch. Stuck. Like our marriage was a cage. Like our life together was something she needed to escape. After that conversation, things got worse. Arguments started. Small things became big things. Dishes, money, work hours. Everything became a reason to fight. And the worst part? I kept trying harder. I worked more, saved more, tried to be a better husband. But sometimes, the more you try to fix something, the more obvious it becomes that it's already broken. Then one evening, I came home from work and noticed something strange. Melissa's suitcase was on the bed, half packed. My heart started racing. "What's going on?" I asked. She didn't look surprised, almost like she had been waiting for this moment. "I'm leaving." Just like that. No explanation, no discussion, just 2 words. I remember standing there, trying to understand what I had just heard. "Leaving? For a trip?" She shook her head slowly. "No, I'm leaving you." The room suddenly felt smaller, like the air had disappeared. "Why?" I asked quietly. Her answer was colder than anything I expected. "Because I deserve more." More. That word echoed in my mind for weeks. More money, more excitement, more freedom. More than me. 3 months later, we were sitting in divorce court. The judge barely looked at us. To him, it was just another case, another broken marriage. But to me, it was the end of the life I thought I had built. Melissa's lawyer was aggressive, very aggressive. He argued that Melissa had sacrificed her career opportunities for the marriage, that she deserved compensation, half the house, half the savings, the car, and spousal support. I sat there listening as my life was divided into numbers, assets, accounts, property, everything reduced to paperwork. When the judge finished reading the ruling, Melissa had won almost everything. The house, the car, half of my retirement savings, and monthly payments for the next 3 years. I walked out of the courtroom feeling like someone had erased my life. Melissa followed me outside. She looked happier than I had seen her in years. She leaned closer and whispered, "Enjoy starting over from nothing." Then she turned and walked away. And just like that, 15 years of marriage were over. That night, I slept in a tiny one-room apartment, a mattress on the floor, 2 boxes of clothes, and a silence so loud it felt unbearable. But what I didn't know yet was that Melissa had made one very big mistake. Because sometimes, when someone takes everything from you, they also remove the only thing that was holding you back. And my real story was just beginning. 2 months after the divorce, I saw a photo that explained everything. Melissa wasn't just starting a new life. She had already started it, and I was never meant to be part of it. My new apartment was small. So small that when I stretched my arms, I could almost touch both walls. But honestly, I didn't care. Because the space around me wasn't the problem. The silence was. For 15 years, I had lived with another person. Now, every evening felt like a reminder that I was alone. The first weeks after the divorce were brutal. I woke up every morning feeling like someone had erased my identity. Who was I now? Not a husband, not a homeowner, not the man I used to be. Just a middle-aged guy trying to rebuild from zero. One evening, my friend Marcus called me. Marcus had been my best friend since college. He was the kind of friend who never sugarcoated things. "Daniel," he said, "stop hiding in that apartment." "I'm not hiding," I replied. "You absolutely are." He paused. Then he said something that stuck with me. "You didn't lose everything. You just lost the wrong person." At the time, I didn't believe him, but I would remember those words later. A few days later, something happened that changed how I saw the divorce. I was scrolling through social media, a bad habit I hadn't been able to break. And then I saw it. Melissa's new photo. She was sitting in a fancy restaurant, wearing a red dress I had never seen before. Across from her sat a man in an expensive suit. They looked comfortable, familiar, close. The caption read, "New beginnings." My stomach dropped. Suddenly everything made sense. The late work nights, the distance, the arguments. Melissa hadn't been trying to fix our marriage. She had been preparing to leave it. And the man across from her? His name was Ryan Cole, a real estate developer, very successful, very wealthy, and apparently very interested in my ex-wife. When Marcus came over that weekend, I showed him the photo. He studied it for a moment. Then he laughed. "What's funny?" I asked. "You still think this is about you?" "What do you mean?" He leaned back in the chair. "Daniel, she didn't leave because you weren't good enough. She left because she thought she found something better." The words were harsh, but they were also honest. Melissa had traded stability for excitement, predictability for wealth, and me for someone she believed was a bigger opportunity. The problem was, I couldn't compete with someone like Ryan. He drove luxury cars, owned multiple properties, had connections everywhere. Meanwhile, I was sleeping on a mattress on the floor. Life didn't exactly feel fair. A few weeks later, I heard something interesting. My old coworker Kevin stopped by my office. "Hey," he said casually, "I saw Melissa last weekend." "Oh?" "Yeah, she was at a party with that developer guy." I tried to sound indifferent. "And?" Kevin shrugged. "She looked happy." Then he paused. "But she also looked different." "How?" "I don't know. Nervous, maybe." At first, I ignored that comment. But the more I thought about it, the more curious I became, because happiness usually looks relaxed. Melissa had always been confident, but nervous? That was new. Around that same time, something unexpected happened in my life. My boss called me into his office. "Daniel, I've been watching how you handled the last project." I nodded. "It was difficult," I admitted. He smiled. "That's exactly why I'm impressed." Then he slid a folder across the desk. "I want you to lead our new development project." I blinked. "This is a promotion?" "It's more than that." The numbers inside the folder shocked me. Higher salary, profit shares, leadership position. For the first time in months, I felt something different. Hope. That evening, Marcus took me out for drinks. "To new beginnings," he said, raising his glass. I laughed. "You sound like Melissa's Instagram caption." "Difference is," he said, "your new beginning is real." As the weeks passed, my life slowly started improving. The promotion kept me busy. My income increased. I started saving again. But something else was happening too. Something I didn't expect. Melissa's perfect new life wasn't looking so perfect anymore. One evening, I ran into an old mutual friend named Laura. She hesitated before speaking. "Daniel, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Did you know Melissa moved out of the house?" I froze. "What?" Laura nodded slowly. She and Ryan had some kind of argument. Apparently, the relationship that had seemed so perfect online was already starting to crack. That night, I realized something important. Melissa thought she had upgraded her life, but sometimes, the things that look like an upgrade are actually a downgrade in disguise. And soon, karma was going to prove it. 6 months after the divorce, Melissa knocked on my door. Not the house she took from me, not the life she thought she deserved, but the small apartment where she once said I would end up forever. And the look on her face told me something had gone very wrong. But before that moment happened, something else unfolded. Something that proved Marcus had been right all along. Melissa didn't leave because she found happiness. She left because she chased an illusion. By the time winter arrived, my life looked very different. The new project at work had turned into a huge success. Our construction company had secured a major contract with the city. It meant bigger projects, bigger responsibilities, and bigger income. For the first time since the divorce, I felt like I was standing on solid ground again. My apartment changed too. The mattress on the floor was gone. In its place was a proper bed, a comfortable couch, a dining table, small things. But they meant something, because every item in that apartment, I had earned again. Marcus visited often. One night he walked into the apartment and looked around. "Well, look at this," he said. "Not bad for a guy who lost everything." I laughed. "Still a long way to go." Marcus sat down and shook his head. "No, Daniel, you're doing exactly what people should do after a disaster." "What's that?" "Rebuild." Meanwhile, Melissa's new life was starting to crumble. At first I didn't know the details, but rumors travel fast, especially in a city where everyone knows someone who knows someone. It started with a simple conversation. Kevin from work came to my office again. "You remember that developer guy Melissa was dating?" "Ryan?" "Yeah, that one." Kevin leaned against my desk. I heard something interesting about him. I raised an eyebrow. "What?" "He's not exactly the successful genius everyone thinks he is." Apparently, Ryan's company had been struggling. Several projects were delayed. Investors were pulling out. And there were whispers of financial trouble. The kind of trouble that can destroy reputations overnight. At first, I tried not to think about it. Melissa's life wasn't my problem anymore, but a small part of me couldn't help wondering. Did she know? Or had she built her entire future around someone who was already sinking? A few weeks later, the answer came unexpectedly. I ran into Laura again at a grocery store. She looked uncomfortable when she saw me. "Daniel, I didn't want to bring this up earlier, she said quietly. But Melissa hasn't been doing well. I stayed silent. Laura continued. Ryan lost a big investment last month. How bad is it? Bad enough that he had to sell one of his properties. That explained a lot. Ryan's confidence had always been built on money. Without it, what was left? Then came the real shock. One night Marcus called me. You sitting down? Yes. Why? I just heard something crazy. What? Ryan left Melissa. I blinked. What do you mean left? Marcus exhaled slowly, as in, gone. Apparently Ryan had disappeared after a massive financial loss. Investors were furious. Several lawsuits were being discussed, and instead of facing the consequences, he packed up and vanished, leaving Melissa behind. The irony was almost unbelievable. Melissa had left a stable marriage for a man who disappeared the moment things became difficult. But karma wasn't finished yet, because a few weeks later, something happened that neither Melissa nor I could have predicted. It was a quiet evening. Rain tapped softly against my apartment window. I had just finished dinner when someone knocked on the door. At first, I ignored it, but the knocking continued. Slow, hesitant, almost desperate. Finally, I opened the door, and there she was. Melissa. She looked different. Not the confident woman from the restaurant photo, not the victorious woman from the courthouse. This version of Melissa looked tired. Her makeup was faint, her hair messy, her eyes uncertain. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said something I never expected to hear. Daniel, can we talk? Standing there in my doorway, the woman who once told me to enjoy starting over from nothing was now asking for my help. But what Melissa didn't realize was this. The man she left behind was not the same man standing in front of her now. And the next thing she asked me would test everything I had learned about forgiveness. The woman who once told me, enjoy starting over from nothing, was now standing in my doorway, looking like she had nowhere left to go. And the next words out of her mouth were something I never expected to hear. Melissa stood there silently for a moment. The rain behind her was getting heavier. Drops rolled off her coat and onto the floor of the hallway. Can we talk? She repeated. Her voice sounded smaller than I remembered. I stepped aside. 5 minutes, I said calmly. She walked inside. The apartment suddenly felt different, not because it was smaller than the house we once shared, but because the person standing inside it had once taken everything from me. Melissa looked around slowly. You've changed the place. I shrugged. Life goes on. She nodded, but didn't smile. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she finally said the thing that had clearly been weighing on her. Ryan is gone. I heard, I replied. Her eyes dropped to the floor. He didn't just leave me, she said quietly. He left everything. She explained what had happened. Ryan's business had collapsed faster than anyone expected. Investors were furious. Loans were unpaid. And the moment pressure started building, Ryan disappeared. No goodbye. No explanation. No warning. Just gone. Melissa laughed bitterly. I guess I chose the wrong person. The irony of that statement hung heavily in the room, but I didn't say anything, because sometimes silence says enough. She continued talking. Apparently, Ryan had convinced her to invest some of her divorce settlement into his projects. A lot of it. Too much of it. And when his company collapsed, that money vanished too. Suddenly, the woman who had walked out of court feeling victorious was now facing financial disaster. I had to sell the house, she admitted. My eyes lifted. The house? She nodded slowly. The one I got in the divorce. For a moment, I felt something strange. Not satisfaction, not anger, just distance. Like hearing news about someone I used to know. Melissa looked at me carefully. I know I don't deserve to ask you for anything. I waited, but I need help. There it was, the real reason she had come. What kind of help? I asked. She hesitated, then said it quietly. I need somewhere to stay. Just for a little while. The words floated in the air between us, and suddenly I understood. The woman who once owned my house was now asking to live in my apartment. Marcus would have laughed if he had seen that moment, because life has a strange sense of humor. I walked to the kitchen and poured a glass of water. Then I turned back to her. Melissa, why would you think I'd say yes? Her eyes filled with something I hadn't seen before. Regret. I know I hurt you, she said softly. I know I destroyed everything. She paused. But you're the only person I know who might still care. I studied her face carefully. The confident woman I married 15 years ago was gone. In her place was someone who had finally realized something painful. Choices have consequences. For a long moment, I didn't answer, because this wasn't just about a place to stay. This was about something bigger. Trust, dignity, self-respect. Finally, I spoke. Melissa, do you remember what you told me outside the courthouse? She nodded slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes. Enjoy starting over from nothing. The room went silent. She looked like she wanted to disappear. Then I said something she clearly didn't expect. You were right. Her head lifted slightly. What? You were right, I repeated calmly. Starting over from nothing was exactly what I needed. I walked to the door and opened it. The rain outside had slowed. Melissa stared at me, confused. I'm not angry anymore, I said. But that doesn't mean I can go backwards. She stood there for a moment, processing what I had said. Then she nodded slowly. I understand. Her voice cracked slightly. I guess this is my version of starting over. Melissa stepped outside, for the first time since she arrived. She looked at me directly. I'm sorry, Daniel. Not the dramatic apology from movies, just a quiet truth. Then she turned and walked away. As I closed the door, I realized something important. Karma doesn't always arrive with anger. Sometimes, it simply lets people face the life they created. And Melissa's story wasn't over yet, because the next thing that happened to her was something neither of us saw coming. After Melissa walked away from my apartment that night, I thought that was the last time I would ever see her. But life has a strange way of bringing stories full circle. And 6 months later, I learned the final chapter of Melissa's story. The months that followed were some of the best I had experienced in years. My career continued to grow. The development project I had been leading became one of the most successful in the company's history. The promotion turned into another opportunity, and then another. For the first time in a long time, my future looked clear. Not perfect, but peaceful. And that was enough. Marcus noticed the change, too. One evening, we sat together at a small restaurant downtown. You look different, he said. In a good way. How so? I asked. You finally stopped living in the past. He was right. Melissa had once been the center of my life, but now she was just a memory, a chapter that had already ended. Then one afternoon, I received an unexpected phone call. It was Laura. Her voice sounded hesitant. Daniel, I thought you should know something. My stomach tightened slightly. What is it? It's about Melissa. Apparently, things had continued to go downhill for her. After Ryan disappeared, several of his business partners started investigating what had happened. Financial records were uncovered, bad investments, fraud allegations. And unfortunately, Melissa's name had appeared in some of those documents. Not because she had done anything illegal, but because she had trusted the wrong person. Her savings had vanished, her reputation had taken damage, and the life she had imagined with Ryan had collapsed completely. But that wasn't the part that surprised me most. Laura hesitated before continuing. "Melissa moved to another city," she said. "She's working at a small marketing agency now." "Is she okay?" I asked. Laura sighed. "I think she's learning some hard lessons." After that call, I sat quietly in my office for a long time, not because I felt happy about what had happened to Melissa, but because I finally understood something. Karma doesn't always arrive with revenge. Sometimes, it arrives as reality. Melissa had chased a life that looked bigger and brighter, but she discovered something many people learn too late. Not everything that shines is gold. A few weeks later, something unexpected happened again. I received a letter. Not an email, not a text, a handwritten letter from Melissa. Inside the envelope was a single page. Her handwriting was neat but slightly shaky. The letter read, "Daniel, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect friendship. But I wanted to say something I should have said a long time ago. You were never the problem. I was. I was chasing a version of life that didn't exist. And in doing that, I lost the one person who actually cared about me. I hope life gives you the happiness I once had, but didn't appreciate. Take care of yourself. Melissa." When I finished reading the letter, I folded it carefully and placed it in my desk drawer. Not because I needed to remember it, but because it closed something inside me. The story was finally over. Years later, my life looked very different from the one Melissa left behind. I bought a new house, not as big as the old one, but it felt more like home than any place I had lived before. I built new friendships, new routines, and eventually, I even opened my heart to love again. But this time, I understood something I hadn't known before. Love is not about excitement or status. It's about loyalty, respect, and choosing each other every day. Sometimes people ask me if I regret anything, if I wish the divorce had never happened. My answer always surprises them, because the truth is, no, I don't regret it. Losing everything forced me to rebuild my life. And sometimes, losing everything is the only way to discover what truly matters. So if you're listening to this story right now, and you feel like someone has taken everything from you, remember something important. Your life is not defined by what you lose. It's defined by how you rebuild afterward. Because sometimes, the greatest comeback begins the moment everything falls apart. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more powerful life stories like this one. And tell me in the comments, do you believe in karma? I'll see you in the next story.